Next up, we're going to handle the delete use case. And this use case is very similar to the add case, but instead of having a string after the A command, it's going to have a number after the D command, just like I show in these two examples here. And an important part is that the first one means that the user wants to delete the first task that they see, and this one means I want to delete the third task that I see. And I mention that because sequences in many programming languages are zero-based. So the first task that the computer prints out is going to be the 0th element in the sequence, but the user sees that as the number 1. So we'll just need to handle that as we go along. Handling the input is going to be almost exactly the same as the add case. So where we get that string D1, we're going to drop those first two characters. So that's familiar by now. And if we come back over here to the input processor, now we're going to be working in this area right here, the delete case right there. And I can just actually copy that, and let's get rid of that and paste that one in there. Instead of add, that's going to be, well, that one's going to be delete right there. And then this one will also be delete. And before I start writing that function, let's come back over to the book for a few moments. So here I note that when I write this handle delete function, I already know 3 things about this function. So number 1, it's going to take a string as input. So the string we get up here is going to be D space something like D space 1. Then we're going to drop that first 2 characters off of that right there. These 2 characters will be dropped off. So the string that handle delete gets should be something like the number 1 or the number 3, but in the form of a string. So it's going to take the string as input, then it's going to need to attempt to convert it to an integer. That can fail. Then it's going to need to attempt to delete that task from the database using the task ID again that the user sees, so we'll need to convert that. And because we access the database, we're going to be working with try types again. And without looking any more at the book there, I know that I can come back over here and say I want to do private def, and this one's going to be called handle delete. And as I mentioned, it's going to take in a string right here. So we could call it S and say that it's a string, but I do say in the book, I call it task ID string. That's actually important because it needs to be a meaningful name right there. And then as usual, we're going to return try over here. And when you think through everything delete is going to do, it's going to need to, let's see, convert string to an int, delete the task, and just like handle add, we're going to want to view the list of tasks after that. So when you think about this last thing, that's going to, again, you return unit. So then we know that this try up here is going to be a unit right there. And now we just need to implement this code inside the body. And now if you happen to cheat a little bit and look down here, you can see that the code for this function is actually going to be very short, but the discussion of it is longer than that. So the algorithm here is going to be, we're going to attempt to convert the given string to an integer. If that fails, the function should short circuit right then. And what I mean by that is if, let me clear this, if the user, instead of typing in D1, they type in something like D, hi mom, that should fail. And then the function here, and then our handle delete function should fail at that point because there's no point in going on from there. Then if that integer conversion works, we should subtract 1 from that value to get the real index. And again, that's because in every programming language I know, lists are zero-based. So we need to go from what the user sees, which would be like a task number 1, down to what the computer needs to know, and that's index 0. Next, this function should return the number of rows that are deleted, as I note here. And because I'm only letting users delete 1 task, this should always be 1. So actually, I made a mistake over here. This is going to return that integer right there. So I just need to change the order of things here slightly. So what's going to happen here, when we delete the task, we'll get that integer. And then down here, we need to return number of rows deleted right here is the way that's going to work. So with the magic of copying and pasting, we now have this code over here. And I have all these comments in here from the book, and I'll leave them in there for just a moment. So again, step 1 is convert the input string to an int. And if that fails, go ahead and blow up right there. So instead of trying to protect this toInt, which can throw an exception, I'm just going to let it throw an exception because now Part of what I did over here was I wrapped the entire function inside of the try. So as you recall from previous lessons, this is a block of code right here, and I'm passing this block of code into the try constructor. So if and when this throws an exception, it will be caught by this try and then handled the rest of the way. So that's that first comment, and now we can delete that one. Next comment here is that the task ID a user sees starts with 1, so we need to subtract 1 from that for 0-based sequences. And it's important to know that the delete function expects that to be 0-based, so that's why I do that. So this calls the delete function. So if you recall, we have the db parameter was passed into our input processor. Way back here, when we created the input processor instance, db was passed in there. So we have that db reference right here. So now inside of handle delete, we just call that delete function right there. And I forgot, I had something wrong with what I said earlier. Earlier, I had in mind that we were going to show the view after we deleted the records, and maybe we should too, so let me just put that up here. So what I'm doing here is the delete returns a try of int, so I can go over there and look at that. So delete is right there. It returns this try event right here. Now I come back here, and so that's why maybe count is a try event. If I hover over that, you'll see that's a try event. And again, I mention this from time to time. You can always put types here if you want, if that makes your code easier to read. You can always put that in there like that. Then, since I have a value here, it's either going to be a success or failure. What I can do right here is print out this view. The reason I'm doing this first is because I want to return the int here, which is the number of values that were deleted from the database. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense in this particular case because this is always going to be 1 or 0 for our code. But if you think about this being more real-world code, that's what I'm trying to show here, is that this value here will return that number of deleted rows, and then I'm trying to pass that back to whoever calls us. So again, with an emphasis on the real world, this is how you would do something like that. So what I'm going to do here is print out all the records that are left in the database, and then here I return that. And I'm taking a shortcut here. In normal code, you would not do this very often, like very, 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 very rarely. You know, maybe count is a try event. What's going on here with get, this is actually kind of a nasty thing. So you don't want to do this in production code. So I am taking a shortcut here. I just told you I'm trying to do something real world, and then here I'm doing a shortcut. But anyway, if you forgive me for that, what's going on here is that get, in this case, is going to return an int. And the huge problem with get is it's going to throw an exception if this is a failure. And the only reason I get away with that is because I'm wrapping this function inside of a try. There are other ways I could handle this situation, and I may show those later in the course, but for right now, just know that get can throw an exception, and the only way I'm getting away with it is because I wrap this whole thing in a try. So now, getting away from that, let me clean up that code a little bit. Let me clean up that code and save that, see if I made any mistakes here. Aha, I see what I was doing here. So the problem we have right here is that handle user input is supposed to return a try of unit, but when I call handle delete, it's returning a try of an int. So what I had in mind is that if you want to do some error handling right here, you could say val num rows deleted equal handle delete there, and then you could do something to deal with number of rows deleted here if you want to. So here you could print out something to the user that if num rows deleted, I'll just type that out a little bit, if num rows deleted equals 0, then say something to the user. And actually I could just go ahead and do that instead of just talking about this. So what I'm thinking is that one is going away. That's why I didn't have that in there before. So let me just implement this code instead of talking about it. So if number of rows deleted equal 1, then what I want to do is just handle the view case. So this is the success case, and that will print out the view of the database. Otherwise, what I want to do is tell the user that, and this could be an error message here, system.error.println had a problem deleting that, and then save that. Whoops, and I always get myself in trouble here. So now you can see why I call these maybe, right? So if I had shown this type here was a try event, I would not have done that. And if I had named this maybe, I would not have written that code. So again, the problem here is that was not an int, that was a try of an int. And now one way we can handle that is with a match expression here. So maybe number of rows deleted, match, and that's the usual success and failure cases here. So success is going to be the integer I, and then the failure case will be failure, and I should get a throwable or an exception here, like that. And now I can say, well, I don't really want to get into the details of what that throwable was. I'll just do that. And now, since this is going to be I, this is actually going to be number of rows deleted. So let me change that. Number of rows deleted right there. And then I could say if number of rows deleted equals 1, then all I want to do is handle the view case there. And that shows the view from the database. So we do that with the side effecting open parentheses there. Otherwise, and now here, this is the case where number rows deleted is anything but 0. So that actually means the same as this. And then the only problem I have here is that these are returning unit values and they need to return try of unit. One thing I can do since we're duplicating code is say I want to do a private def print delete error message like that. And then that's going to make that a try of unit. And now I can do something like that. And then this one could be the try right there. Cut that, paste that one there. And now this can be print the delete error message right here. And similarly, this can be the same thing right there. And that gets rid of those error messages. Then the next thing I see is that this block of code here is starting to get pretty long inside that case. Normally, I don't like to have this much code inside of this case, so at some point I want to go ahead and refactor this code out of here. But that's kind of secondary to what I'm trying to show in the score, so I won't get into that here. So I'm going to leave that there for the moment, and then we can go ahead and test that this delete process works. So I come back to the terminal, and now I can run our application. And the first thing I want to do is view that database and say, well, you know what I want to do is I want to delete, how about number 2? That'll be park the car. I'm going to get rid of park the car. And then do the view. Oh, whoops, something went wrong there. Okay, I'm sorry, I had a bit of an interruption there. So kind of an amusing thing is that for you this is only a couple of seconds later, but for me it's 2 days later. So I tried to recreate our environment here and the error that I was getting. So it turns out what happened was human error. So what I did first was I typed into Command V to view our contents or to view our tasks. And then what I meant to do was delete item number 2, but actually what I did was I only typed in a number 2. So if we go back in the code and we look at what happens when you type number 2, is it doesn't match any of these cases. So it doesn't match Q, H, V, L, or the add or delete cases. So what happens is it comes down to this case that I haven't implemented yet. And therefore, it tries to run this code, and this will throw an exception when you try to run it. And though we don't see the exception here, you see that I'm returned to my command line prompt right here. So that's what happened right there. Instead of typing D space 2, I only typed 2. So again, that was just human error. So if I go back here and run this again, and now I can do view, and now my intent was to delete the second item, which was park the car. So I'll do D space 2, and we see that the second item is gone. So there we go. And now if I want to do D space 1, I can delete that item. And now we test our error handling and type in something like D99, had a problem deleting that, delete hi, and had a problem deleting that. So that's great. All of our code seems to be working.